Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community. I am so excited to be in person. I'm in Toronto with my friend Shae. Hi, Shae.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. We just had such a juicy conversation on your podcast. You are such a good interviewer, so I'm hoping that I can, fill your shoes. You are amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, can you tell everyone a little bit about you and maybe your journey into business? Because it's actually like a pretty like traditional journey, I think, into business. In some
It's got a
ways?
twist.
Okay, yeah, give it to me.
It's got a twist. So I grew up in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
My dad's been in the industry for 40 years. I will be 42 this year. So he made this shift as I was, pulling myself up, and he was not around because he was across the country in the fashion business is what he was in before. And so I've grown up in the industry, seeing in the 80s when the interest rates were 18% and gold went through the roof. And so I think a lot of people, the natural path, they would have thought it was going to be real estate. I never wanted to get into real estate, so it was not my dream. I was always really proud of my dad, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I left when I was 18. I moved to the United States. I started my university degree there in marketing. And then while I was in school, and it's a long story, and we can go any which way you want to go, okay, on the pod. But it's a really important part of my story that's shaped me today. So I'll share it with everybody. It's a long story, but I was introduced to the issue of human trafficking. I saw it firsthand. I didn't know that it was called human trafficking back then. I was describing what human trafficking was. I'd seen girls that were being prostituted and forced to be doing things that they didn't want to be doing. And that was when I was 18. And I went on this 7-year journey. Context, this is 2003. I went on a 7-year journey that took me, I transferred to UBC, seeing what was going on in Vancouver. Then I did my last semester in Sydney, Australia. So I moved over there. And while I was there, the topic, I used to say it was following me, but it wasn't so much that it follows you. It's that you can't unsee what you see. Right. And so now I would go down, and I grew up going out to Vancouver all the time. My godparents lived in White Rock, and we're a skiing, snowboarding family. So we would go to Banff, go to Whistler. We drive through the downtown east side all the time. There's part of the way to get out of Vancouver to go up to Whistler. And you just be like, there's a whole bunch of prostitutes and crackheads down there, and like as a young person, that's really what you say. And so this time being in Vancouver, it was like so different. I saw the downtown east side as like, it had just opened my eyes. Same thing when I went to Australia. And so I got really curious as to what was Canada doing, and really more or less like, what aren't we doing in this country? And so as I was graduating, my grandfather had fallen ill. I came back to Oakville, just outside of Toronto, to really support my dad in that time, with the plan to go back to Vancouver or move down to Vancouver or move to California was my plan. And I was working for a fashion company at the time. I actually helped open up H&M that's in Oakville Place still
Amazing.
today. So that's what I was doing. And I was, for 3-4 months, I was like opening up H&M. I'm working there. My dad's in real estate. He's the number one agent there. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like making this Swedish company money, right? But I'm like, I should be making my own family money, or at least like getting my license and learning the business, even though it's not my path that I want.
Yeah.
But it's just smart to know it. We also, my parents with 3 other partners started Remax in Italy. And my plan was like, well, if I get my license, I'll probably just go move to Italy one day, and I had gone to high school in Italy for a summer semester. So that was kind of my like plan, that somehow I got duped into the real estate industry without realizing it. Even
Also,
though it was
your
like
parents co-started Remax Italy.
Yeah.
That's kind of sick.
They did. Yeah,
cool.
It is. Yeah. So, and I, in high school, I was going over there lots for the Remax Italia conventions and the galas. And so I was like, well, if I get my license, then surely I could go over and be in Italy one day, And so that was really kind of my mindset, was like, I shouldn't be making somebody else money. It's a great skill to learn. If you're going to buy a house anyways, it just helps you understand like the whole process better, and investment. And so I really saw that it was going to advance me either way, even though it wasn't something that I thought I was going to go into full time.
Right.
And fast forwarding at the same time, as I was studying and getting my real estate license, the topic of now what I knew was human trafficking and what was going on in Canada, and not just in Canada, but like in Toronto, in Burlington, in Oakville, in Waterloo. Yeah. Like, you can't unsee it. And at that time I was like, nobody's doing anything about this, and this needs to stop, right? Like, we need to raise the awareness. And so at the same time, I started out my career in real estate, and I founded a nonprofit. At the time, it was just an initiative. We probably weren't anything official for the first like 4 years. And then eventually I founded it as a nonprofit status to fight human trafficking in Canada. So at the same time, like, those two paths were like happening.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of, you know, my background. I've been in real estate for 17 years. Freedom is the name of my organization. It's 16 years old this year in January. And yeah, so that's kind of my background, how I got into it. Obviously, I watched my dad as an entrepreneur growing up, and my dad had like paper routes, and he was in the jewelry business and making things. And when I was younger, I was a photographer. I developed my own stuff, and then I would sell my photography and doing art shows. And so I think it was just embedded in me from like a young age that like, you create the life you want, and you don't need to work for somebody for a paycheck. You know, you can actually create the money through your own skills, talent, and your passion for what you're passionate about.
Yeah. Okay, taking you a little bit back, Shae, like, I'm just thinking about, you know, you join this career, like, not like, oh my God, I really want to be a realtor. Like, this is like what's like my life dream. Yeah. Now, this is definitely a huge part of your life. And one of the things I think that's so interesting about realtors and real estate is that, like, I think it is the ultimate relationship community-based business.
Sure.
And so I'm curious for you, like, how did you get your first book of clients? Like, what has been important for you in maintaining those clients over the years?
You're absolutely right. Like, I make a very clear distinction to people when you hear people saying like, oh, you're in sales. If you're in business, you're in sales regardless. Like, if you have no sales, you have no business, right? Like, and some people will say you have a hobby, right? But like me, I'm like, you have no money. Like, it is a hobby at that point, right? So taking that outside of it, we are in a service-based, people-first business. And the more you foster relationship and you really take that seriously, like, you are being invited not just to handle 95% of what will be for people the largest financial investment that they have, you're being invited into the most intimate space that people really share. You know, they're choosing you to not just experience the dream and the joy of either finding their first home or upgrading to another home, they're starting a family. We also get like the hard and the ugly side of divorce and the reasons behind divorce, or there's a death in the family, and there's a lot of vulnerability in that. So you're not only needing to just care for the financial component, but you're being entrusted with some of the most intimate spaces that you would never hear otherwise if you weren't their realtor, you know? And so when you realize that, I think it changes your perspective, and that you're really there to serve at all levels. You know, to answer your question about my book of business, obviously it was different. I had an advantage, being that, you know, my dad at that point was in the industry for 25 years, whatever the math is, 25, 30 years, right? I've been in the industry 17. And so I obviously went through a mentorship period of, you know, learning from him, which there was the behind the scenes for the first 5 years. Like, when I started studying for my license, I wasn't even answering the phones. I was organizing the files. I was cleaning up the back rooms. Like, I literally was the sweeper, you know, doing the stuff. Then I started answering phones. Then I started doing the paperwork for the agents. And we have like a whole support system. So there was like a good 3 years where I was behind the scenes before I got permission, and I earned my way into being in the field, is what we would call it, to be like working with clients. But then there was that mentorship period. And you know, we really didn't have social media back then, right? Like, we had Facebook, but, you know, Twitter had just started.
Yeah.
Like, that was just a thing. We didn't have Instagram. And so really your ability to connect with people, and right away, like, if you can tell if you would be able to trust somebody.
Yeah.
You know, you get that feeling like, are they authentic or not? Do they want something from me or not? Is this self-serving? Are they all about themselves? And so for us, for me anyways, being at events and networking, being in business circles and groups and young leaders. And like in Toronto, back in the day, there were so many of those. COVID obviously now has changed that for everybody, but there was a time where it was like I was at most things like at least 3 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Down at like the Toronto Board of Trade having stuff. There's always these different like RBC, business, just like business functions that you would have, going to the breakfasts and those sort of things to just connect. Because what I didn't want was to have to rely on my dad to like feed me leads, feed me clientele. I didn't really care about people being like, oh, well, your dad always gave you like your clients. I really didn't care about that. Like, it was like, as much as my dad may give me the clients, I still have to keep them. Like, I can get fired.
Yeah.
A client can choose to not work with me. Right. So like, as much as I was given certain things, like I still have a really big responsibility to not only keep the client, foster it, and have them call me again in 5 years from now, because that's usually the average period that somebody keeps a home, that they're looking to upgrade or downsize depending on the cycle of life. And I want to be a part of their journey for that. I want to be remembered. I want to be front of the thought, that they're going to think of me whenever you're thinking of real estate, you want to think of me.
Yeah.
Right. So my dad can't do that. I had to foster that, so that's kind of, like what I did in the beginning.
What do you think's changed about being top of mind then when, there wasn't as much digital space? Yeah. It sounds like, you're doing all the things, you're going all the places. And I want to ask a little bit more about that in a bit, because I think that's really key to building like a really strong community. But, now what do you think is key for people to stay top of mind for their clients?
Yeah. I mean, obviously using online spaces is really important, because I always say like that's our newspaper today.
Yeah.
Right. Like there were the days like at one point we were spending like $300,000 a year advertising in the newspaper, and it's wild to think like that's just gone.
Yeah.
I remember the day when we pulled out of in our local community, the Oakville Beaver alone, and it was like, like take your breath away. Well, today, that same take your breath away, that's how your response should be if like you're not in an online space, right? Like whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok, and people will say, well, one is better than the other. And my firm belief is the best platform to be on is one you will consistently show up on.
Yeah, big time.
Right? So it's like which whenever you like and you're willing and you're committed to show up on, but like show up. And if you're not, that's where people are looking first, So it's like great if you have the billboards, and like I can't tell you, I maybe go to my mailbox once a month.
Yeah.
And I don't even look. I look for my mail, and everything else like gets thrown out, like the flyer. So like really gone are the days of like, just listed cards and just sold cards, and they still serve a purpose. And there's things we do to make sure our print material that we still do, just not as big of quantity, is still seen and separated from the rest of the junk that's quite literally in the mail. But I definitely think, utilizing YouTube and making sure that you are being seen, because you want, if you're not there, like you're invisible, in my opinion. Yeah.
Do you find that a lot of your new clients, like that you've kind of obtained over the last few years, like are they people that you meet in person and then it's like more solidified with your online presence, or do you find you're getting leads from the online space?
We get some from like, whether it's like my like personal Instagram or like the team's Instagram. Our website is still a huge driver. Like we get a lot of inquiries that come through our website, and we get about, I don't know, I think it's like 30,000 unique views every month. So it's a very good driver for exposure and attraction. But the in-person, I'm going to say, is a much quicker conversion.
Yeah.
Whereas like on Instagram, it's usually, I've been following you for a long time and I've been seeing your stuff. And maybe they've been engaging with me on a personal level, whether now, like with my daughter, obviously gets a lot of traction online.
Yeah.
Where people will be like, I've seen your daughter and I've seen this and you're doing this, and I would love to speak to you about real estate. So that time period, the nurturing process, if you will, without me even realizing it.
Yeah.
Is a longer period where I could go to an event like yours and within an hour, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, have a very impactful conversation with somebody. And they're like, I really need to speak with you further about real estate, or would you come and see my home?
Yeah.
So I still think it's more effective to be in person than online sometimes.
Well, and it's not only that too, Shae, like it's also like, you know, you meet people and they might not be like looking, like, for example, you and I were just talking about this too, because you know, your amazing real estate team sponsored High Five Women, which we were just so grateful for. And kind of ever since you and I got connected, anytime someone's like, oh, I have like a luxury home or whatever that like isn't selling, which actually there's a few people in my life right now, immediately I'm like, oh my goodness, like they need to connect with Shae. Like, even though I'm not looking to sell or buy a luxury home at this time, like I know that this is something you guys specialize in. And so I've made that connection in my brain and I'm eager to make an intro. So it's like, even when you're meeting people at like the RBC Bank or events or lunch or whatever, it might not even be that person that you're going to impact. It could be someone in their network. They're networking for their network, which is incredired.
Yeah, no, and that's a very good point. You know, my dad has said over the years, you know, I've heard him say this like a gajillion times. Yeah. Like, you are the storefront that people shop from, you know? And so you're always on as an agent. Even if you don't want to be, you are. Like, how you show up, how you leave the house dressed or not, you know, people are always watching you. And you have that opportunity, whether you realize you're being interviewed or not, when you're at an in-person event, oftentimes like you are, because they know you're a realtor. Even if they don't, like you just said, even if they don't need my services right then and there, they're still going to walk away with an impression subconsciously of like, I would use her or I wouldn't. I trust her or I wouldn't. Like, she was put together or she was not. She seemed, you know, listening, attentive. So many realtors, salespeople, they love talking. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love talking. I have a podcast. Like, I like talking. Okay. But to have the skill set to be able to listen, and not just listen, but actually be able to retain and say it back to the person. Like, I've heard you, I've seen you, I've understood you. Yeah. You know, and you're hearing my needs, you know? So it's, I mean, it's really important. And that's why even like in the online space, like there are some realtors that I'm like, you just want to be Instagram famous by the things you post. And I would be shocked if you got clients. Yeah. Like, because of how you show up on Instagram. And there is a fine line between being authentic and exposing every corner of your life that isn't meant for the gram.
What do you think that line is? Because I think that this is something that's so interesting, no matter what your profession is, guys, like if you're listening to this, because I agree, like, you know, you're talking about being a realtor, you run into your clients for Tino's, I'm sure, you know, like at the grocery store. Yeah. But I actually even feel this in my own business, like where as we've grown High Vibe Women and the Social Snippet, like I have 85 clients. I see them all the time. You know, I was at Costco the other day and one of them ran into me and my husband's like on the hunt, like he's trying to leave. And I'm like, no, we stay and we talk to this person. Yeah. You know, like that's the right thing to do. And I'm so interested in what they're doing and I'm passionate about what they're doing, right? So it's easy. But what do you think that line is of like oversharing online and how that can maybe impact somebody who's growing their business?
I'm going to say it depends on the type of clientele that you actually want to attract and serve. Because I think there is a category of client for everybody. Yeah. And I'm going to say this like really clearly. And so maybe it's inappropriate in some ways, but like if you want to be sleazy online in business, you are going to attract the sleaze balls. Yeah. 100. Who will pay for you quite literally. Yeah. In all the ways. Yeah. Okay. And if that's how you want to show up, that's fine. But you will not be able to attract the clientele that typically is my clientele, who are private, they're conservative. Yeah. For them, they see themselves as self-respect and they would not see how you're presenting yourself as respectful for yourself, right? So it really depends on the clientele you want to tap into. And if you want to tap into the luxury market, typically, not always, but typically it's a more conservative, sophisticated, carries themselves of class and caliber. And that's going to be expected of you because you're going to be representing them.
Yeah.
And you would never want to have a publicist to represent you and your brand that wasn't in alignment. And that's really kind of how I see myself as a realtor. But I think that translates into all different areas of business in general. I'll give you a really real story. I had a listing in Oakville that is a $3.5 million listing representing the sellers. You asked where some of my leads came from. I had a lead come in online through our website that buyers wanted to come and look at the house. I ended up representing the buyers and I double-ended the sale. I don't know the buyers at all. And really nice couple. They have 2 kids, family people. She doesn't work. He's the main guy buying the $3.5 million home. They're closing in July and he messages me last night. Hey, Shae, I should pull up my phone and read it to you verbatim, but I'll just tell it to you. Hey, Shae, hope you and the family are doing well. I see that your daughter Koa is walking now, in brackets. Yes, I follow you on Instagram. Hope that's okay. Bracket, thanks so much for your help. I had no clue that these buyers, I don't know them.
Yeah.
I didn't. Obviously, I've gone to know them decently well throughout the process of representing them and having this deal come together. But I had no clue. I've been working with them. So I sold the property to them we did the deal in December. I started working with them at the beginning of December. We did the deal just before Christmas. Okay. So I was working with them for 3 weeks. We're at the time of this recording, we're sitting at the very end of March.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've 5 months that I've been taking them to revisits, and then they see my daughter taking her little steps in the house as we're doing the revisit, and his wife is carrying my daughter around and their daughter. Okay. So we've built a really good rapport. At no point at all have they ever mentioned anything about Instagram.
Yeah, totally.
I have no clue. And this is a true story. This is what he sent me last night. I had my own conversation of everyone is always watching and you don't know who's watching. And they, in the future, will decide if they would call me again to represent them on the sale of the home that I just sold them.
Yeah.
Their kids are in high school. They're going to at some point want to downsize. This house will become too big for them. Right now it's great for them because they have room and they have teenagers and they want more space. He has 1 floor. The kids have the other. There's a little studio, 700 square feet above the garage. So it's everyone has a quarter if they need it. At some point it's going to be too big. How I show up online for the next 4 years is going to impact whether I get the opportunity
Yes, totally.
to have that sale to represent them. And they're also they're a faith-based family. That also matters. So it's how I show up. If I'm in a bikini, even working out videos, sometimes I see women and it's do you really have to wear that? I know you're in fitness, but your also brand is different than my brand.
Yes,
right.
Totally.
But I think about me where I'm no, I couldn't, even though I removed my breast implants of 11 years back in 2022. So I could wear that top and it wouldn't matter anymore. But I think about me when I had implants, and it's I could never do that because of my clientele that I don't even realize are there and watching. And then you have unrealized clientele that are still in the nurture process without you realizing it, that are deciding whether or not they would work with you.
Yes.
And later, I have so many of these stories. I had another woman reach out to me through realtor.ca, which is so bizarre because she could have just come she follows me on Instagram. I found this out later. And she said, I've been following you for a long time. I ran into her. I met her once in Oakville on the lakeshore. We had a little quick conversation. She's I tuned into your podcast and you were talking about God and co-creating with God in your business, not just on Sundays, and what that would look like. She's and I literally felt I needed to message you to say, would you come and look at our $3 million home in Ancaster and give us an opinion of value? This is the importance of being authentic to who you are, right? Because if I decided to just keep God in a box.
Yeah, totally.
Right? I probably would have needed another year of nurturing her for her to be like, yeah, you know what? I really want to use Shae. And they're from Oakville originally. They know my brand. They know the reputation. They know the authority. There was no question about that. The decision is, do we want to use Shae or not?
Yes, of course.
And these micro decisions of mine is what got me the invitation to come and represent them on selling their home.
Yes.
Now, when I talk about God and then I go and I present certain things a different way on Instagram, that's really conflicting. So it's like how much you show, what you show, there is a line, and it depends on who you want to attract, you know, like.
Well, I was going to say, Shae, too, I think it speaks to this idea of like, you know, I'm not super polarizing either way on anything. I don't post too much like either way. I'm so dead inside, like from being a new mom that I'm like, I have no thoughts. But one of the things I do know is that you're not for everybody. The same way I'm not for everybody.
No, and I don't want to be for everybody.
Yes. And I think sometimes people, when they are doing their marketing and they're building their community, they really, really focus on making sure that it's like, oh, I don't want to post that because it could be polarizing, or I'm worried about this. And it's like, there is something good to that. And especially when you're talking about like luxury sales, right? Like I went to this is like LOL, but I went to the not luxury, VIP movie theater, you know, VIP movies.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you're like, yes. So went and in Waterloo, and I was struck by the fact that the commercials are different. Of course they are, right?
Of course, yeah.
But it's like, yeah, because a Gucci commercial is not going to land in the main one, right?
No.
Like, but for this VIP audience, like that's a perfect person to advertise for. And I think that's the same thing for us. It's like, maybe you don't have a luxury product, and that's actually okay. And maybe you are somebody who like, you can dress a certain way, or you can show up a certain way, or you can talk about things in a certain way, and that actually does speak to your audience, and that's fine. But I think that's a really important note, is that like for me, even something that's been always kind of top of mind, and I think it's because of like my professional career before this, it's like I swear and I like do the things, but I'm pretty professional at the end of the day. Like I'm wearing dress pants. Like that's like kind of how I show up all the time. And that has been helpful with people trusting us to do their social, knowing that we're not little like influencers running around. We're actually like strategists.
Totally.
And I think like it's really important to recognize who you serve, and then realizing that your content needs to actually appeal to those people.
100%. I agree.
So for you, as you're growing your business so much over these years, whether that be like, you know, even just thinking about your real estate career and having these people join you and so great to hear also from you, right from the horse's mouth on like that your podcast works as a funnel, right? Yeah. Like people are often think podcasts, they're like, oh, it's like you're sitting in front of a mic, but it's like, there's actually just so much juice there. And I see that with my own podcast too. So what is right now when you think about when you're in person and, you know, your brand has such a reputation, your real estate team has such a reputation as well. So you actually don't need to like rely on that as much, right? Sure. Where like early on people are like, this is who I am. And you're like, what is that? You know, and it's a different thing. So I'm curious for you, like when you're in person, what does that strategy look like? And is it just showing up and being yourself and being authentic and then hoping that something comes from it over time? Or like, do you have some kind of system? People ask me this all the time. I have no system. So I'm always curious what other people are doing.
If I'm at an event, what is my process in order to possibly secure a new client?
Yeah, I would say yes. And like, especially because I know for you have such a massive network too. So I think it's also about like, how do you work to maintain that over your business career?
I think anything in sales, if you have a spirit of serving first, like, and I know I said that earlier, but I really, you have to lead with that. And part of serving first is, how can I serve you? Like, what is your pain point right now? And is there anything that I can do to help? And that could be just questions in the market. That could just be like, you know, a person may not have any desire to sell for the next year or two, but you just saying, you know, I'm happy to meet you where you're at right now. I can give you a market update. I can get you acquainted with the market, and then we can stay in touch every 6 months if you want to know P's and Q's about the market, or if you have questions, and just like, I'm available. My door is open at any time. Yeah. You know, there's a lot, especially realtors, not to shit on realtors, but I see it all the time where it's like, if you're not ready right now to buy, that means there's no money right now, which means like you're not going to be top of mind, and you could go into my CRM, you could go into some type of funnel. But oftentimes that is the feeling that gets translated and left with the person they're standing in front of. It's like, oh, I can't make money from you right now. Well, I have to eat. So, okay, next, and it's like, again, like hearing a person, if somebody is and I have this happen right now with, he's not a client of mine. He's still, I'm a contender for him. He is doing exactly that. He wants to sell his condo possibly next year. He's in Oakville. His kids live out in Calgary. He's here. And his realtor that he was using unfortunately had a stroke. And so he's looking for a new agent. And so he's wanting to just build rapport, And so I said to him, well, what would be helpful for you between now and a year from now? Like, would you like for me to contact you every 3 months, give you a market update? Do you want to start receiving emails? Like, what is it that I can do to serve you and bring you value right now so that come when you're ready, you're like, I'm clear, I'm ready, and I have really good understanding for what he needs in order to make a sale. Never mind, use me. I got an email from him last week just saying, thank you very much. I received this email, and then it's the consistency and following through on what you've committed to. And that's where now you need systems in place, but I think standing in front of somebody, it's going back to like listening to what is their pain. Do you have the ability to serve them and help them in that way? And if you have this genuinity about yourself, they are going to feel that, and they are going to invite you to learn more about the pain and what they're needing. And in my industry, it's not as often that like it's a, hi, I meet you and I'm going to list your house, or we're going to go buy a property in the next 2 weeks, right? Like there really is this nurturing process where you're fostering a relationship. And if you're going to start a relationship, that means you have to be in touch. You have to listen. You have to communicate. So yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, and before we wrap up, this is my last kind of question for you. One of the things I love that realtors do that I think is so different than other people.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on your podcast. I was like, I'm 5 minutes away from becoming a realtor, guys. Just so listen up.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they do is those like pumpkin pie Thanksgivings, like, dropping off a holiday gift. Even realtors I've used, it's been like years later, and I'm like, I don't need these movie passes. Like, you don't need to give these to me. Like, but it's like literally you can't stop. And there's this loyalty, and I don't think I've told you this story, but when I bought my first house, I used a realtor, connected to someone I worked with, her husband, and he was amazing. And then when I got married, my husband has so many realtor cousins, like so many aunts and uncles. So it was like a no-brainer. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I cried going to my realtor being like, I'm so sorry because I know the way you make the money is actually really on the sale. And he was like, it's fine. Relax. I had sent him so many referrals and I'll even done, I'm sure. But it was just like, but he is so top of mind for me still.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious for you, like, what do you think about that? And do you think that that's so important as like those little touches? And, I actually think they're so important across all industries, not just for realtors. But I think you guys do it best.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. One of the things I know that we do well and that we pride ourselves on is really giving the client that which they didn't pay for or that they're expecting. And I think that is the difference between doing something good and then becoming great.
Yes.
And all greatness is in the details. It's in the small things. It's in the touches. They're in the things that you didn't expect that you were paying for, and so these things do matter. And across business, you'll hear so many very successful people say, most people won't remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel. And that's what we pride ourselves on. We want to give you the ultimate real estate experience. And and I'll say this too, regardless, it doesn't matter if you're purchasing or using our services in the luxury segment of the market. 52% of our business comes from under 2 million. So it's a market that we still heavily service. Our reputation is just very strong in the luxury market. But whether we're selling a home for $300,000, $3 million, or $30 million, the service you receive is white glove across the board. It doesn't matter the price point. I like to use it as like a BMW analogy because most people can understand that. So, when you walk into the BMW dealership, regardless if you're buying an X, a 3 Series, or like the Boss 7 Series BMW, the service is still the same. You still get the bottle of water when you come in. You still get greeted. You still have the same feeling texture on the brochures. But when you look at the marketing, how you speak to that demographic that's buying an X is very different than a 7 series BMW. And that's what we do, the same thing. Like we have the home collection for under 2 million. We have prestige from 2 to 5, and then estate residential and our private collection for 5 million and up. And so we market appropriately to the demographic, but that shouldn't compromise the service quality and the experience that you have. Because again, our goal, our mission is to be with you for the journey. So if you're buying today at 300,000, in 5-10 years from now, I want to be with you on the journey where you're buying that $3 million home. And I've been there since the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and then you're also your children, right? And it's the same thing. You want to know that your kids are going to be taken care of if they're only buying a $700,000, $800,000 home, which I know is very hard to do in the Toronto GTA market. Yeah. But if you can find it, you know, you want to know as a parent that just because your kid isn't buying a $5 million, $3 million home, that they're still going to be in good hands and they're going to be treated well at that price point, you know? And so these details, they matter. And what you give to people that they weren't expecting goes a long way. That's what actually gets you talked about. And a lot of our business still today is on referral. Is still, you know, where we get new business, but then also that repeat business as well.
Such a good reminder. We'll close off there. And Shae, like, such a good reminder, because I actually think referral-based business is just so good. And people really underestimate like how important it is when like, even for us, that's how we've grown our business so quickly, was just referrals and then client referrals. And that's just the best way to do it. And of course, marketing is so important, as we know, but there is just something so amazing about it. You've poured in so much today. It's been so fun to chat with you. We'll have to have you back, but because you have so much wisdom, but I'd love for you to tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, I am on Instagram mainly, and just Shae Invidiata, and come find me in my DMs. I'd love to connect with you. Obviously, Invidiata Realty as well, if you are interested in real estate, and come say hi.
Amazing. And I will link all that in the show notes, as well as our podcast together on your podcast, which will be amazing. And I'm just so grateful to you and our new friendship. And for those of you who are listening, please go give Shae a follow. If something resonated, let us know, and keep on building your community.
Yay.